All right, I've got to find something here to use as a bell because I still haven't been up to the cabinet. All right. No, that's not it. No. Well, ding. I got to get over to Arcata sometime. Pick up our camera. Good morning, Rotarians and friends. I didn't see any visiting Rotarians hop on the call, but we do have a couple of guests here, I know. Would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself, Angela?
Sure. My name is Angela Robershot, and I work with, I'm the branch manager at Service Master by Chronic in Eureka. We're a new branch, but not a new service master. Robert and Michelle Chronic own 3 branches of Service Master. Their base is in Reading, and they have one in Chico and now one in Eureka. And I am 4th generation Humboldt County, and they are just moving in to our area.
Well, welcome to the meeting. And I know Brandy invited you and then she didn't show up. So we're all here for you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
She's fishing.
I know. The halibuts are allowed again. So that's a big deal for anybody who fishes. I imagine that's where Cam and Craig might be this morning too. Hi, Thomas. Thanks. I'm glad I asked so I could get it right the second time. Thomas, you're our speaker this morning from Open Door. Is that right?
That is correct. I'm a site administrator for a few of the clinics for Open Door and run multiple services.
Excellent. We're really looking forward to hearing from you this morning. Very important and inspiring work. And I do see Holly here. Thanks for popping in again. Looking forward to turning you from guest to red badge very soon, I hope. Well, welcome everybody. Maggie, did you see any other guests pop on? I'm trying to see everybody here, but.
Nira is with us.
Oh, hi, Yuri. I did say hi earlier. Thanks for being here from afar yet again. How soon do you come on over, Yuri?
If everything works out, it'll be on the 1st of October.
That's soon. That's great. We have less than a month to go then. I hope it all works out. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. I'd like to do a little look back because I want to qualify. I hope nobody is upset that I usually get the birthdays the month after. And a little backstory, I have missed some of my important family members' birthdays or other important events. It's kind of my thing. So I eventually remember because people remind me. So let's have a quick look back at birthdays in August. If you're on this list, why don't we start with Terry and Romy, who happen to share a birth date, I understand. And I think Marty or Terry, when you come off mute, Marty's going to need to mute.
Yeah, I know. Hang on.
He's all geared up for his
that's
craft
better.
talk.
Oh, now I can't hear it.
Hang on.
Okay, that's better. I can't hear it.
Romy, would you like to go ahead while Terry goes and bops Marty's mic off?
The best part of Terry's and my birthday actually this year was an exchange with Terry that was so sweet and wonderful. I was actually, I didn't like my birthday, not at all this year. I was like, no, thank you. We're just gonna say do over another time. And it wasn't that I care about aging. It just COVID. I had broken my hand. It was still healing and it was yucky. And I had COVID and a little skin cancer. I mean, it was just everything. And so I just said, pass, we'll take a birthday when it's better time. And
Fair
so
enough.
I still get to plan a fun birthday.
That sounds great. And Howard, I understand you did a little something special for your birthday.
Yes, we went to Crater Lake Lodge. I've always wanted to go there. I love the National Park Grand Lodges. And we had a nice room there with a view of the crater. And we took a hike up the local mountain, and I was pleased at the age of 80 to be able to get to the top. And the word passed up and down the mountain that this 80-year-old was hiking up the trail. So I was famous for a few hours. Everybody knew me along the route.
That's
So,
fantastic, Howard.
yeah,
That is a beautiful spot. Just
Yeah.
the color of that water under the open sky is fantastic.
yes.
And well done. I've been up those trails, and yeah, that's quite a hoofing. So you should be famous for that. Well done.
Thank you.
I see Marty and Terry have decided to consolidate. Terry, do you want to say a little bit about your birthday?
Sure, we decided to turn one computer off because we were having a little issue there.
Perfect.
Had a great day, and I echo what Romy said. And we tried to go to Sushi Spot on my birthday, and they were really busy. So we went to Naveen's, and I had Eggs Benedict for my birthday dinner and sushi the next night. So it was great.
That sounds great. I've often missed out on the Sushi Spot, and figured out this last weekend that if we order by phone at about 4:30, we can get our takeout by about 7. So very popular. I didn't see Tama on the call. And Siva, I apologize if I didn't see you come on. Are you here? Nope, doesn't look like. And I think we missed Ashley, but Steve is here. I know that.
Yeah, I'm here. So I got to start my birthday out with an early morning bike ride in the woods on my mountain bike that I was able to buy at the end of June. I was lucky to be able to find one that I was looking for in Oregon. And so for me, getting up in the morning and going for an early morning bike ride is awesome. I got to work during the day, but I'm not quite retired yet, hopefully soon. But my wife made me a lovely dinner. I wanted Thanksgiving dinner, and I said, well, let's just get a chicken at Costco and we'll call it a turkey, and then we'll make everything else. So that's what we did. And we basically had Thanksgiving dinner for my birthday. And this weekend, my daughter Christina is going to come for a little visit from Reading, which will be nice. And we'll just hang out with them. So had a real nice time.
That sounds great. Yeah, a chicken is a turkey for two, isn't it?
Yeah, well, or 4, depending on how hungry you are.
2 for 2 nights. Well, I hope Christina is safe and sound as she comes over 299. I know there's a lot going on between here and there. So
Highway 36, because I think 299 is still
right.
closed, unless I'm mistaken.
That's probably like, well,
Yeah.
tell her to be careful. 36 has, I think, the most turns of any highway per length. So it's fun if you're paying attention.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I, just as a matter of recognition, Joyce or somebody clued me in. I understand that one of your sons did a fine job at a concert recently. Was that Howard? You mentioned that, I think.
Yes, he played brilliantly. I was totally impressed because he's just finished his undergraduate at Oberlin. And he was playing with professionals, very good professionals, 2 from the Bay Area who came up. And they did Beethoven quartet, which is very demanding. So you can be very, very proud of your son, Steve.
It was awesome. That's our son, Carson, who was the exchange student on the Noon Club, went to Switzerland when he was in high school. And it was an awesome concert. Howard and his wife were there on both Friday or Saturday and Sunday of last weekend when my son Carson was playing. It was really a joy for us to hear the wonderful music and to see my son play. And that was right before Monday morning. He hops in his car and begins his drive across the U.S. to go to graduate school in Boston. So he drove across the U.S. 4 days, I think, or 5 days. It was insane. And so now he's at Boston Conservatory of Music. So he's working on his graduate degree.
Fantastic. Well, I know he's been working very hard on that for a very long time, and he's definitely inspiring to hear. So,
and
thanks
he's the principal violinist, guest violinist for the Eureka Symphony at the December concert. So I'll
perfect. So
want to see him play in December.
please do remind us. That would be fantastic. So other things. Now I actually haven't forgotten my own anniversary, but I have forgotten others, such as my parents. So again, don't feel offended that we waited till August or September to talk about August. Is Luke on the call? Luke and Caitlin? No? Okay. How about Jessica? Jessica, I saw you come on. Maybe she stepped away. And Steve's not here.
Jess, you're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to press the space bar and that was not working. James and I had a great anniversary. It was 11 years married, 22 years together. And we went down to Southern Humboldt and spent a night at Benbow, and then spent a night at my godfather's property in Redway, and we drove all over creation down there, all kinds of crazy roads. We did an amazing hike. And then the big thing was we did some reconnaissance for my parents just celebrated 50 years married, and we had a little just a small gathering for them at family property in Redway, and so that was really fun. So yeah.
That sounds very nice.
Yeah.
Sarah, I don't know, is it on the call? Sarah Hiller, but I do believe I see Rachel hanging out over there. She's probably muted and off camera because she's got the little guy.
Hey, morning.
Morning.
Yeah, it was 2 years, and so we had just sat out on the deck and had some steaks and corn and mashed potatoes, all from the garden. Not the steak, but the steak was from Ferndale meat. But yeah, it was lovely.
Wait, I just want to dwell here with the little guy on the camera. My gosh. Just want to squeeze him.
Good morning, guys.
Morning. Gosh, he's getting big fast. My goodness. Feeding him all that good Ferndale produce, right? How about Terry and Marty and Ray and Holly happen to share an anniversary date?
No, you talk.
Yeah, well, Terry and I had our 39th this year, and we're still having a good time playing together, having fun together, and well, we went all over the place. We stayed here and hung out. And I can't remember what we did actually.
Me neither, but it must have been
It was fun.
Whatever it was.
It was good.
Well, we all know you're both strong, independent people, but I got to say on this Zoom thing, you look better together. So this works in the anniversary theme. I didn't see Ray hop on this morning, but I believe Randy's here. And Randy, I'm sorry that Larapin just didn't quite work out on the date this year.
No, it didn't. But we made it last night. So
excellent.
We were in Oregon and Washington the week before, taking our daughter Marissa to college. So we didn't get back in time to get a reservation, and they were full on our anniversary. So, but we made it to Larapin last night.
It's a different sort of thing right now. They have been busy all summer long.
It is. This was our 32nd, number 32, and we've made just about, if we might have missed one or two, but most of our anniversaries have been at Larapin. We've been attending Larapin since they were in West Haven.
Yep.
So we're
excellent. Well, I'm glad you ended up getting in there. How about I talked about what I did. So Randy and I share a love for Larapin, and Elizabeth and I were actually married there. So we had our 28th anniversary on the 28th at Larapin, and now they have garden tables out there that are right literally smack dab where we were standing as we said our vows. And that was pretty special to get that table and be outdoors. But we spent the weekend in Trinidad, borrowed my dad's house, and got to see whales for the second time in my life, frolicking out off of Trinidad Head, and that was pretty fantastic and magic. So, man, I feel so lucky where we live. There's really no better place I'd rather be. Speaking of Marty, we have a craft talk this morning. I've got to preface this with, to my knowledge, which could be flawed, Marty is the quickest to get from red badge induction to the end of his red badge to blue badge requirements, and this is it. So Marty, without further ado, take it away. And I'm going to turn off the screen share for a moment, since you said you didn't have any slides, and give you the full screen.
Okay, thank you much, President Ian. Aloha, guten morgen, buenos dias, sunrisers. Yes, I'm Marty Lay, and thanks for you letting me up your average age and join you in service above self. I was born in San Francisco in 1949, 5 weeks preemie, and they put me in a box, and I was ready to get out and rock. So my parents were first generation Americans. Dad was German, my mom was Danish, and we lived in a kind of a blue collar working neighborhood, very diverse neighborhood, very ethnically spread out, and all the people in the neighborhood took care of my brother and I, who was born in 1951. We started to give my mom problems from day one, and she was a very patient woman, and my dad was too. He was a house painter, did Victorian homes and mixed his own colors, custom colors, and painted. My mom did all the bookkeeping and the accounting and promotional stuff for my dad, as well as worked for an accountant friend of hers as needed. So she raised my brother and I. She was very much a swimmer. She was a lifeguard at Sutro Baths. So she had me in the water when I was 6 months old in Covelo at Town Creek, where our friends had a ranch out there. And that started my life going through school, which with a number of people in San Francisco, we had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different sports. I wound up being swimming and soccer, played with two teams, an Italian team in North Beach and another team, a Russian team out in my area. And so it was a really good way to grow up, I think. We live right near the Golden Gate Park and Park Presidio Boulevard. So that was our kind of backyard. Graduated from high school, 67, worked at the Fillmore Auditorium. My brother and I did for a while in the 60s, and learned a whole lot of things that we didn't have to keep going for. Had fun. Moved up here. During high school, I worked at a lot of jobs. We worked for my dad in the summers, helped his crews get prepped. And then I got a job in Emeryville at a die casting plant through Metal Shop, and continued working at a delicatessen as a delivery boy and clerk. So I kind of worked through school and learned a lot of different things about business, so to speak. I didn't understand it then, but I did it. Went to City College of San Francisco in surveying and mapping. Left there to go to Alaska with 3 friends, and I went up there and worked all over the interior. I was a straw boss on a firefight crew up out of the Yukon, and we worked in canneries. So I got a good experience up there and decided I wasn't going back to San Francisco. Came up to Humboldt. I applied to Humboldt, came up to their first engineering environmental resources program as a startup. And that was in 1970, graduated in 1973. And through that process, I had Sam Panisi, who probably many of you know, was one of my later instructors. And at the same time I was living here, I was working for the Stebbins and Hunt family on doing handyman stuff for their rentals. So I knew Jeff when he was a little kid, and the Hunt family, and they kind of took me under their wing, and it was a lot of fun learning the local lore from them. As I spent my period of time in Humboldt, I also met other people who I wound up being a call-on deckhand for a crab fisherman and a salmon guide that I went to school with. And I kind of got busted up doing some of that, kept going with engineering. 1973, graduated, went to work for Winsor and Kelly. Sorry, they're, I don't know if Steve's still on there, Steve and Jessica, but they're now GHD. But I had a great time at Winsor and Kelly. They threw me out into Hoopa for the first few years, and I did what they call water resources investigations on 5 or 6 different Northern California Indian reservations, working with the tribes on developing water system, means to conserve water, crops to grow. Then I went into more engineering with structural and construction management. So most things I designed, I constructed. I was a construction engineer on almost every job I've done. That included roads and mostly water and wastewater infrastructure. 1982, I was working with the Arcata wastewater treatment plant project. I was the resident construction engineer for that project, working with Bob Gerhardt and Dr. Allen on the marsh construction and the whole process for that. I went down and met Terry in 1977 at Winsor and Kelly, and we hit it off. And in 1982, we got married. And that's the same time that I shifted gears and had been doing a job in Santa Rosa for Winsor and Kelly on a 50-mile pipeline rehab. Came back up here to do the Arcata wastewater treatment plant job. So Terry and I kind of had a back and forth startup marriage, and it was pretty interesting to get us through that. I continued with that at SHN Engineering, and Terry was then the business manager for SHN, the first business manager. And I continued my work in Hoopa, for Yurok tribe work, and got into hazardous waste management and testing and design, rehabilitation of properties. Did that for the rest, really that, and civil engineering for the rest of my career at SHN. Worked on projects in Eureka, Arcata, the dock projects. In Eureka, I was a construction engineer and design of civil on that project for the C Street Matticat Square, tore down the old Lazios and rebuilt what's there now. I retired in 2015, holy criminy. All right, hang in there, folks. 2015, and the Rotary has kept me going. I started Rotary with Terry in 1992 as a Rotary Andy, and really enjoyed the international and community service aspect of that with Southwest Eureka. So I was really hanging out and doing all their projects with them. And I joined Rotary in 2002. I became president in 2013-14, and my Rotary wife was Jessica. And we had a kind of went down to different programs together and got to know your club as Terry had moved over to your club. And I had been to 8 international conventions. I've been to 5 what we called Festival of Brotherhoods. They were project fairs in Guadalajara, Mexico. So I've done quite a few projects of water and wastewater and health clinic situations in Mexico. That's about it for, I guess, what we're up to. I'm really glad to be in your club, and I'm looking forward to I've been surfing for 60 years and backpacking and diving, so I'm going to keep that up as long as my little body keeps going. Thanks, you guys. Enough said.
Marty, we're so grateful to have you here with us. And, you know, you and Terry are a dynamic team in Rotary and in so many ways. And you mentioned about raising the average age of the club. I'll throw a quote that my dad keeps telling me, because he's up above his 80s now. He says, "You're not old until you're mold." You're still doing it. You're still out there hiking and surfing and doing what you love. So you're not old. You're one of us. And there's nothing wrong with getting old, right? That's an honor that not everybody gets. So thanks for chugging along. Okay, up next, one moment. We have an opportunity for a little hands-on work. One second here. Okay, so AJ has arranged a little mini swap project. It's a continuation of our greenhouse at Peninsula School. And once we finish that, we'll move on to the water project. But this weekend coming up, there's a few people signed up, but last night there were 4 slots still available to jump in and help in a COVID-safe outdoor hands-on. So I'm hoping that after this meeting today, 4 more lucky people will sign on, because I'm going to be out of town that weekend and I really want to work on it. So somebody's got to get in there in my honor, at least. And it doesn't have to be, you know, with the tools. We got an opportunity for a second photographer because we're going to get all the angles and the excitement of what's going on there. So definitely follow the link in this week's meeting announcement. And AJ had sent it out last week. Get yourself signed up if you want to do something this weekend. We have a little challenge coming over from Rotary Club of Eureka. They're out for blood. I wish it were October. That would have gone better. But I like their graphic here. It kind of looks like their wine bottles or something there, maybe feeding them wine. But no, really, this is a challenge to all the Rotary clubs in our area. And I'm sure John would be super stoked as one of the very involved people working at the blood bank if Rotary of Arcata Sunrise happened to show up in mass and drain ourselves to the community's advantage, so to speak. So look for that coming on September 25th. The only hesitation I have there, John, and you know, I know right now isn't type O or a couple of types in the O range in desperate need. So I don't want people to wait if they're that type.
Yeah, if you're O positive or O negative, we'd love to see you. The sooner the better.
Yeah. Anything more you wanted to say about this particular drive?
What we're hoping to do is have each Rotary Club in the area host the drive and invite all the other clubs. And if we can get everybody involved, we can probably have a Rotary Blood Drive every other month, year round. Okay. And that would be outstanding.
Well, tell you what, John, we're going to do our best to not beat, but come up to the challenge that Rotary Club of Eureka put forth. But why don't you look ahead on the blood bank's calendar and let Arcata Sunrise know when our month should be based on the need over there.
Cool.
Sound good?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You bet. Barbara, you know, we left this invisible last week because I just plumb ran out of time, but Barbara has prepared a presentation in line with Rotary International's commitment to involving diversity, equity, and inclusion in Rotary and everything we do. And so she's prepared a little presentation on the invisible knapsack. Barbara, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to stop my share. You should be able to share.
Okay.
Now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I wanted to just start this with a little story about when I first became aware of white privilege. I was, for 5 years, married to a man from Arcata sister city of Camuapa, Nicaragua. And his children were here for 4 years. I lived with them for 4 years and just absolutely adored them and was never aware at all that they were experiencing any kind of racism. And in 2005, my stepdaughter and I started doing some diversity and inclusion workshops together. And she started telling me about all these different experiences she had had where she was the target of racism. And, you know, one of them being she was running to a class one time at Eureka High and somebody said, just keep running and don't stop till you get to the border. And, you know, and that was shocking to me. And I realized when I first started learning about white privilege that there's privilege just in not having to even be aware that that sort of thing is happening. So that was the beginning of my education. And I came across this article, which I know Romy has been using as in teaching in her classes for the last 20 years. But I came across this article last year when I was doing a little more education for myself around equity, inclusion, and diversity. And it's called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And it's based on an article that was written back in 1989 by Peggy McIntosh. If you want to learn more, you can look that up on the web. But here's what we're talking about. White privilege is like an invisible, weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, tools, and blank checks. It's like a package of unearned assets that we as white people can count on cashing in each day. I realized I had been taught about racism as something that puts others at a disadvantage, but had been taught not to see one of its corollary aspects, white privilege, which puts me at an advantage. So as she's listed in her article, I think she had 23 things that we don't have to think about as white people. And so I've pulled out, I think, 10 of them. So as I read through these, think about how having or not having this package of unearned assets has impacted your life and how your life would be different if the reverse were true. So the first one is, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. The next, if I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area which I can afford and in which I would want to live, and I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant toward me. Number 3, I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. And I can easily buy posters, postcards, picture books, greeting cards, dolls or toys featuring people of my race, and I can go into a supermarket and find the staple foods that fit with my cultural traditions, or into a hairdresser's shop and find someone who can cut my hair. I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. Number 6, I am never asked to speak for all of the people of my racial group. And I can be pretty sure that if I ask to talk to the person in charge, I will be facing a person of my race. I can go home from most meetings of organizations I belong to feeling somewhat tied in rather than isolated, out of place, outnumbered, unheard, held at a distance, or feared. Number 9, I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me, and that people who are providing me those services will look like me. And then the last one, if my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask of each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. So obviously, each of these questions gives us really something to ponder and think about, and I wish we could sit and have a long discussion about this together. But here are some things, I just pulled this from the Harvard Business Review, that you can do to use your privilege for good. And first is figure out the parts of your identity that you think about least. And once you've pinpointed them, you've identified your ordinary privilege. Second, start learning what people who lack that ordinary privilege encounter as challenges at work, at school, and in their communities. And you can use the internet as a starting point for that. Third, look for opportunities to speak and act. And confronting people is only one of the many ways we can use our ordinary privilege. And instead, we can ask questions, raise issues, and add perspectives that are not organically emerging in discussions at work. You can finish reading that one if you like. And then fourth, be thoughtful about moments when you may inadvertently speak over the group you mean to support. It's not unusual to accidentally center ourselves instead of the people to whom we're trying to be an ally, but it is costly. And when it happens, step aside or step back and learn from those whose lives are directly affected by the issue, rather than presenting ourselves as the experts. Take their lead while using your ordinary privilege. So hopefully this gives us all something to think about and ponder, and perhaps we can discuss more at a later meeting or at sort of an out-of-meeting work session together.
Thank you, Barbara. Does anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to share from themselves on your experience with your own privilege or lack thereof? May I speak? Please.
Howard here. Barbara, could we get a copy of your notes that
Sure.
you just went through? I found them very helpful, very interesting.
Yeah, Howard, I'll send them to you and I'll send the original article.
Yeah. Well, one comment I can make is I've had incredible privilege traveling around the world in all sorts of different countries because I'm white, and I think also because I'm American, but just being in a dominant culture, people have been so polite and nice to me, and the privilege comes in is it's very deferential. I think that I've come to realize just they're made my travel so wonderful, but also I benefited from having privilege.
Thank you, Howard. Anyone else have thoughts on their own experiences, negative or positive?
Thank you, Barbara. What a great education on that. So essential. I think that a wonderful takeaway is that we need to speak up when we see it, when we see that something is unjust, unfair. It falls on the people with privilege to change the situation, not to wait to hear from others who are impacted negatively because of the lack of privilege. It's our responsibility.
Absolutely. And don't think for a moment that a comment or an action made or taken in the absence of the people that it would negatively impact doesn't matter if you don't check it. You know, it's right in line with our Rotary motto of the things we think, say, and do. When people have thoughts and express them that are negative toward other people, and those other people aren't around to either defend themselves or silence that by virtue of just being there, when we speak up in that moment, it helps that person temper their thoughts and words in future interactions. So it is important to speak up each and every time if there's something to be said about where somebody's gotten off the rails toward other people. It's just so important. And over time, consistency in checking the message can definitely change people's habits and ease things up for the other people that are being hurt by it. So thank you for keeping that in your thoughts, Barbara. Thank you for speaking today. And yes, if Romy and your committee would like to organize a breakout group for a club to hop in on, we'd be grateful for that. So thank you. Okay, up next, some good news. You know, it's now been one full year since the African region was certified wild poliovirus free. And in great follow-up news, we now have 47 of the 53 plus a couple of disputed territories. But 47 of 53 nations in Africa are now fully on board to continue the effort with both local government funding and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative and World Health Organization to finish the job in Africa and assure that wild poliovirus does not come back via circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus. So the commitment is there, and you know, taking a region like Africa and all the countries and political factions therein shows us definitively that eradication is possible. We're going to do this. So don't lose heart in Afghanistan. We're still in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and Africa is one of the many regions in the world that is leading the way and showing us that we can keep the faith and know that we can get this done. Nick, if you're here, are you ready for a raffle real quick before we enter our featured program?
Yep, I had a last minute entry.
Excellent. Take just a moment and we'll be glad to give you that time to make sure everybody gets in who wanted in.
Yeah, I'll just say while we're waiting that I am wearing my African Rotary shirt in celebration of your news. So got elephants on it and everything.
Fantastic. That is absolutely beautiful. Let's see that.
All right. So let's see who's going to be the big winner today. The big prize is $90. That's John Gullum. $5. I'll send that to you through Venmo. And let's see the next winner. Dick.
Did I hear my name?
Yep.
Woohoo!
And Dick, you get $5 as well, and I will pay you both through Venmo. Good job, you guys.
Awesome.
Everybody here notices a theme. It seems to be those that buy tickets are the winners. So thanks, John and Dick, for your consistency. And everybody else, remember, as we start the meetings, the raffle is always open. Okay, today's feature presentation, I'd like to turn this over to Charlie real quick to introduce Thomas and tell us about what brings him here today.
Thank you. Thomas and I met at a meth and opiate board or working group that we were part of a few years ago. He now works at the Open Door Mobile Health Services, the Telehealth and Visiting Specialist Center, and the Open Door downtown clinics of Open Door Community Health Centers. A federally qualified health center serving over 44% of the population of Humboldt and Del Norte counties in rural Northern California. Open Door downtown is the Eureka location of Open Door's medication assisted treatment services. Thomas himself is a recovering addict and alcoholic, began his career in healthcare as a certified medical assistant. He was attracted to the core values of dignity and service that are the hallmark of the culture and mission at Open Door Community Health Centers. During his career, he had the opportunity to grow and work in multiple departments and clinics and clinic sites throughout the Open Door system, both at the patient care and operational levels. They had the privilege to assist and lead on multiple projects that have enhanced care in both clinical systems and within the community, often working in partnership with other service providers and organizations across the continuum of care. Thomas is a graduate of the Clinic Leadership Institute at UCSF, the Center for Health Professionals. Among his many roles at Open Door, he's worked as a leader in the ongoing development of Open Door's response to addiction to opioids across the community, currently manages the Open Door Medical Assisted Treatment Services in Eureka. One of the quotes that he enjoys is the opportunity to carry water and serve those who care for our most vulnerable neighbors is what brings me back every day. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm assuming I'm on. Thank you, Crystal. Listening to that bio, I realized when you send professional bio for things like this, it's a little bit schmarmy. I probably could have done something a little bit better. But again, I'm Thomas Steenblock. I've worked for Open Door now for 14 years. I've been in recovery for 15. Just so folks know, yes, I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. I actually recovered from narcotics addiction back in the day before there was medication assisted treatment. I didn't learn any of those behaviors at home. Unlike many of my fellow alcoholics and addicts, I actually come from a home of loving, kind, well-educated, well-to-do folks who set healthy boundaries and told me that I mattered and all that kind of thing. And for some reason, I never bought into any of that. And I grew up in the 70s and did the things that kids in the 70s were doing, and all of them went on and had lives, and I went on to do what I went on to do. But fortunately, I found my way into recovery and into a completely new life. And And with that, I'm really grateful to be able to be here today and talk to you guys about this topic. It's amazing to be here with the Rotary, your service in the community, and often unheralded and unpraised for all the work that you do in the background, making the world and the community a better place is a real credit to all of you. And it's nice to be able to talk to you about that. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Zoom is always a little hinky. So sometimes when I do it, I can't tell if it's sharing it or not. So let's see. I want to get the right one. Where did it go? Here we go. Hopefully, can you see slides? Okay, great. Now we'll see if they move while I talk. So you heard a little, and is it going to go? And it's not going to go for me. Oh, there we go. Okay. So real quick, just about Open Door, you heard a little bit about it. For those of you who aren't that familiar with us, we're a federally qualified health center. We were first founded in 1971, so they've been a big part of the community for a really long time. Their very first clinic, when they had a clinic with 14 volunteers, was right there in Arcata in what is now the Tin Can Mailman. We actually serve all of Humboldt and Delmarva counties. And that's an area that's larger than the state of Connecticut. And so it's really interesting to think about, we live in this region up here, and I don't think many of us appreciate how vast it is compared to some complete states, and we're just a couple little counties together. We have 11 clinics across that area, and over any given 3-year period, we serve roughly 90,000 unique individuals. So that's a really good portion out of the 160,000 in total that live between the two counties. And we offer a full range of services, including family medicine, behavioral and mental health, case management, drug and alcohol services, and much more than that. And along with that, really why we're here to talk today is about medication assisted treatment, but to even be able to talk about that, we've all heard the word addiction. We all understand that it's an issue in our community. It's often in the news and that kind of thing, but what is addiction really? And so some of you may know this stuff and some of you may not. So bear with me while we just lay just a little bit of a framework for discussing this today. And addiction, here you can see a definition from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, which is a medical society that it sets up basically the standard of care for doing particularly medication-assisted treatment. And it talks about addiction as a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and individual life experiences. And that people engage in compulsive behaviors that often continue despite harmful consequences. The bottom line is that addiction is complicated. Why some people do stuff and end up being addicts or alcoholics and why others do it and do not, there's a lot to that and a lot to unpack. The more important thing is what can we do about it? And what's notable is the prevention and efforts at treatment for addiction are generally as successful as those for other chronic diseases. And this is a thing that people don't often think about. And this is why we talk about addiction as a disease, because what we see is very similar outcomes. And to compare it, here we go. Diabetes. Patients who relapse. What do we mean by relapse? We mean that they stop treatment and they go back to how it was and suffer the consequences of their disease. Type 1 diabetes, and this actually goes even more so for type 2 diabetes, the percentage is higher. 30 to 50% of people go off their treatment, go back to their old habits, and suffer from their disease. Hypertension, 50 to 70% of people go off their regimen, go back to their old habits, and suffer the consequences of their disease. Asthma, 50 to 70% as well. And this tells us some things about this. It tells us that, and if you look at drug addiction, 40 to 60% of people relapse and go back. And that means that a lot of things in healthcare, most of healthcare is really about behavior. We can give you all the right medicines and all the right education, but none of that changes unless you can change from within. And that touches back on the really complex roots of why people have addiction in the first place. And particularly today, we're here to talk about opioids and their consequences. Because when we talk about medication-assisted treatment right now, the core of medication-assisted treatment is for those who suffer from addiction to opioids. We hear about this a lot in the news here locally in Humboldt County. What are opioids? So opioids are any drugs that are either derived from opium or are synthetic drugs made by man that are like opium. And that includes things like heroin, synthetic opioids that are big in the news right now, like fentanyl, that has been causing so many overdoses and challenges across the United States, as well as painkillers and that are legally prescribed by doctors, including OxyContin, Vicodin, Norco, codeine, morphine, and many others. And in fact, I can tell you that nearly half of the folks that we see with opioid addiction started their journey with a prescription from a provider for a legitimate medical condition. And it began there and then went on. And when you're on opioids, you know, people using them for short runs generally don't have a problem. Using for a long time can cause something, you know, physical dependence. And what are we talking about there? Well, we're talking about when you don't have the medication, you go through some withdrawals. And withdrawals are not a comfortable experience. I know this from my personal experience myself. It is nausea and vomiting, diarrhea, insomnia. They'll have anxiety. They'll have increased body temperature. They'll feel blazing hot, and then they will begin to shiver and feel incredibly cold. Racing heart rate, and in fact, heart rates can sometimes go so high as to cause heart problems, muscle and bone pain, sweating, chills, and elevated blood pressure. In fact, withdrawal, if you think of the worst time you ever had the flu, where you really almost thought you were going to die or you wished you would die so it would just stop, that's more or less the experience that most narcotics addicts have when they suffer withdrawal, if they've been using for any significant amount of time. And so what we're really talking about here is addiction to narcotics, to opioids, and how it impacts things. And so does everybody who uses these drugs become addicted and suffer the problems that we see in society that lead to crime, that lead to problems at home, that lead to loss of health, loss of life, overdose, and death? And the answer is actually no. And in fact, we learned something really interesting from the folks that served in Vietnam. There was multiple studies done on this. The military actually shows a higher percentage rate than is even indicated here, but this is considered to be one of the best done studies. And they actually showed very, very high rates of heroin use, up to 34%, and symptoms of dependence among at least 20% of US soldiers while they were serving in Vietnam. So they're there for a few years, they're using heroin for a few years, they're showing signs of dependence. When they return to the United States, only 1% of them, following up over the next 10 to 20 years, only 1% became re-addicted to heroin. And about 10% tried it when they got home and then decided, nope, that ain't for me. Now, how is that? Heroin is one of the most addictive substances known to man. It definitely can cause physical dependence, withdrawal, with all of the symptoms that we named. And it comes back to those complex issues and things that make someone an addict. Physical dependence is part of it, but there's things that are more. And what we've come to learn over time is that the psychological situation for that person, especially at the time that they're using, the economic situation for that person, genetic components, there are genes that tend to indicate people have a higher probability of becoming addicted to certain substances. And their social settings, all of those can impact that. And one of the things that we know impacts it the most is a history of trauma. When people have experienced challenging life situations, they are more prone to addiction. And this includes things like childhood abuse, witnessing a murder, witnessing a death, and so on. So why is it so bad in Humboldt? Our rate's 3 times the rest of the state for overdoses. We have one of the highest rates in the state, and the state has one of the highest rates in the country, so that puts us in a pretty bad place. And there's a number of things that contribute to this. Things like how isolated the area is and how isolated people can often feel. Geographic distances contribute to transportation barriers and accesses to service. Community acceptance and tolerance of heavy drinking and drug misuse. You know, this area, you know, amongst at least some people has a reputation for this, and people kind of buy into that. And then adverse childhood experiences and trauma are associated with substance use disorders. And when they do surveys, people rate very high on the scale of having previous traumatic events in our area compared to other locations in California. So what's medication-assisted treatment and why should we do it? Well, medication-assisted treatment is the use of medications in combination with counseling and other stuff to help provide a whole person approach to treatment of substance use disorder. When comparing counseling alone to counseling plus medication for treating heroin addicts and addicts of opioids, the relapse rate is 40% higher for those who are doing counseling alone than those who have counseling and medication. The two together provide a stronger base. The medications are designed to help reduce the withdrawal symptoms without causing the mental changes and all of the other things. The other thing is when they're getting this medication, they're taking care of it, because the reason addicts do a lot of what they do, the crimes and the various things, is because they don't want to be sick. They desperately don't want to be sick. It feels so horrible, and they will do whatever to avoid being sick. And so they commit many of the acts that they do. They don't feel good about it. Many of the folks that we talk to, I can tell you, they don't like the life that they're living, but they feel stuck because every time they stop, they get desperately ill. And so they fight to keep themselves there. And when we go ahead and we take that off the table, we take the withdrawal symptoms off the table and begin to work with them on the reasons that they use, many, many more people are able to stay in the recovery services and begin to move forward. And, the goal here is to improve patient survival. Without treatment, 8 to 9 out of every 10 opioid addicts will die from the disease directly. They will die from overdose or other complications, heart disease and other things related to it. And that has proved really consistent over time. Intervention lowers that somewhat. It also helps increase retention and retreatment. As I said, fewer people relapse when they have medication along with the counseling. Decrease illicit opiate use and other criminal activity. And that's one of the big things about this. This is what's called a harm reduction strategy. When people are on medication-assisted treatment and they're regularly getting this medication, guess what? They don't need to go roll somebody for their wallet to go ahead and get their next fix. They don't need to work all the time to be focused on that and to commit crimes in order to be able to do it. It also increases their ability to gain and maintain employment. And we have seen that success story in our program so many times. People getting jobs, people being reunited with their children, people being reunited with their families, improve birth outcomes for women who have substance use disorders. If a mother is on Suboxone during her pregnancy, her baby will not be born addicted to opioids. We can change the game. Instead of bringing babies into the world that are addicted to heroin, we have a mom who's in recovery, getting counseling, getting services, getting support, and a baby that's born free of addiction. It makes a huge difference in that baby's life and whether they may or may not turn out to be an addict later in life. So, and another really big reason to be doing this, every dollar invested in addiction treatment programs yields between $4 to $7 in reduced crime, criminal justice costs, and theft. If you add it to healthcare costs, every dollar invested can bring back up to $12 in saved healthcare costs, which we all ultimately pay for. And so that can make a huge difference in the community in which it happens. The communities that invest more in addiction services pay less on a whole mess of other fronts, and it's been demonstrated over and over again, and the data is out there to look at. So, how are we doing this at Open Door? Well, roughly 650 patients in active care for MAT at any time. That's down from 800 pre-COVID. COVID had a really huge impact. Part of the way that you really do addiction services and addicts, it is a disease often titled the disease of loneliness. The sense of isolation that addicts and alcoholics actually suffer is really immense, even amongst people. And so group and being able to interact personally with people is a huge part of recovery. And that was something we were very challenged to deliver during the worst of COVID. We had 1,165 patients receiving those services from us during 2020 alone. And those are the people who were willing to seek services, not all the people who suffer from this problem. And it's embedded in primary care, so we connect people also to get the rest of their healthcare taken care of. We focus on group counseling, education, and support, so the group is the core part of the model, where they're able to check in with drug and alcohol counselors, support each other, learn new tools for living, learn new ways to deal with stress and pain and trauma. On top of that, it has multiple tiers. So there's levels coming in for the person who's really new and very raw coming in. We're trying to just get them on the medication, get them started, get them feeling a little more stable, begin to connect them with services, make sure they have housing and so on. And then there are tiers going on to people who just check in with their provider for their refill, make sure things are going good, who have often developed very full, rich lives. And patients play a role in supporting each other, and that is a very core piece of it, is that shared experience. Sometimes, and I can say this, nothing that I've ever been told in recovery for myself, the tools that helped me grow as a human being, were things that I'd never heard before, but it was different when I heard them from someone who had been through what I had been through. And we've all had those experiences where when we know someone has been through a similar life experience, what they say to us is more meaningful. It hits home. And so that's one of the tools that we use to really help create the sense of community amongst the people that are in our programs. And it's part of a spectrum of care across the community, working with multiple partners. So that's kind of what we do. They really come in. They come in weekly in the beginning, and then the frequency is based on their need and a number of other factors. They meet with our drug and alcohol counselors. They meet with a primary medical provider who checks in with them physically to see how they're doing and to renew the prescription. And then we connect them over the longer haul to behavioral health, to counseling for trauma and for the other reasons that led them to use, and then to services. To help them begin to build a new life, to be reunited with families. So there's a very quick thing. I know the time is short. Is there any questions or things that I can offer to anyone?
Thank you, Thomas. Does anybody have any questions from the room?
I
I had one briefly. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, one of my questions, I guess, and this is primarily because I have certain clientele. I know that the treatments right now are for like opioids. What about amphetamines? Are there local amphetamine kind of like medical assisted treatments locally yet?
There is not yet. There is experimental testing of a few medications for methamphetamine. So drugs work on very different parts of the brain and in very different ways. And in order to treat withdrawal from opioids, you basically just need something that goes in and plugs in the little receptor in the brain and blocks that up. Whereas with methamphetamine, you're trying to treat some different problems. So they have been experimenting with a drug called naltrexone, which is also used sometimes to treat alcoholism and sometimes to treat opioid use disorder. And there's been some small success, but there are experimental drugs coming down, and they're hoping very much to have a medication-assisted treatment for methamphetamine soon. Right now, the number one frontline thing for methamphetamine is still counseling and social supports.
Great, thank you.
Thomas, is there a common thread for people who make the decision to come and seek out help? You know, what is there a point that is similar in most people that gets them to come in your door?
You know, this is the funny thing, and we talk about this in both in recovery and in addiction services circles a lot. The bottom for everybody is kind of unique. What constitutes a bottom for some people, it's not the I don't have a home, I don't have a car, they live like that for years. It's usually a turning point within the person where they can't stand it anymore. That's the bottom line. It's not even fear of death for many of them because they face that so much. And if you are an addict for any amount of time, you lose people to it. You know that you know where the life is going to end you. And for many people, they still persist, but somehow they reach a point where it is just not tolerable anymore to be who they are. And they don't know how to move forward, and they become open to it. The other thing is, I think people reach the end of their rope where they simply can't get any more substances. They've been cut off because they just, their dealers are tired of them. They don't have any money, whatever. And they face continued sickness over and over with very little relief. And that physical sensation of being ill sometimes drives them in, and that's the beginning.
I have another question.
Yes.
I guess locally, community, or I don't know, institutionally wise, or for our community, what is one of the barriers that you see for Open Door being able to provide services that our community needs?
We've been very fortunate. I feel, Open Door is really well supported by this community, and, but I think one of the largest barriers is there's just not enough of us versus the size of the problem. And I think we need even greater level of community partners, the adding of partners like Aegis and Waterfront Recovery Services. The more variety of services, the more different methods that are used, the more different avenues there are in a community, the more people enter and stay in recovery. Different approaches work for different people. I'd say the one common thing that the community could do is show compassion and support. Because the thing that ultimately brought me around and that welcomed me into recovery was that instead of judging me, people wanted to help me. And when the judgment goes away, the doors open up. That's one of the things that keeps people out of recovery and not engaging with us, is fear of bias and discrimination because they're addicts. They're afraid to even tell people. We have a lot of contention in our community over that. If we can begin to encourage our friends, our neighbors, and our families to recognize, because I can tell you, the people who are addicts in our communities, they are our friends, our neighbors, and our families. And sometimes we don't even know it. Many people can maintain an addiction with a really good front on it. It could be happening to someone we know. And so being willing to be compassionate, understanding, and recognize that addiction is not a moral problem. It's a medical problem. And I think that would be the biggest thing the community could do to clear barriers, is to simply work on that bias and prejudice against it.
You're on mute.
muted, Ian.
Thank you, Thomas. That's fantastic advice. And I think everybody here can take that into our communities and our daily lives, because it is all around us. Everyone, I apologize, we're a little bit over time, but I think it's worthwhile. And, you know, sometimes there's just more to hear. So thanks for bearing with us. And Thomas, I wanted you to know that our club, in your name and in your honor for presenting here today, is making a donation to the Wheelchair Foundation, which provides wheelchair access to people that could not otherwise afford it. And I have an anecdotal gratitude to give to Open Door. I grew up out in Maple Creek in the hills with effectively back to the land parents, and we were not of means to afford medical care. You know, basically it was a trip to the hospital or just figure it out and be okay. So when I had a significant sinus infection and it became clear that was the issue, my parents gave me some of the penicillin that we used for the sheep and rabbits, and discovered swiftly that I was allergic to penicillin. So that was, I think, 1974. And we didn't have the means to go to the emergency room. So, and Open Door was there in Arcata. So they drove us down from the hills, and Open Door had open doors for that kind of care for people that, you know, really didn't have the means to have insurance or afford an emergency room visit. And so Open Door is and has been for a very long time a great resource in the community, and is clearly, through your team's efforts, addressing a desperate need in the community to heal and recover. So thank you very much. We will come back to this at our next meeting. You know, as a club, things we do in the community cost money. And so watch for some email thought prompts in the coming week, and we'll come back to this as a featured discussion next week at our meeting. Thank you very much. And as a parting thought for today, the things we do in the community, opportunity presents itself frequently, waits for nobody. Jump on the opportunities around you, participate in our community. Have a great day. Ding.